Welcome back, brothers and sisters. Tim, Braden, Second Legacy, and thank you for showing up. Today, we're going to run through some of the gems, the highlights, the selections from the SCOTUS hearing yesterday around the Vanderstock case. If you're not familiar, that is the Ghost Guns case, and prepare for a whole lot of stupid, because we live streamed it on my channel, and there was a lot of stupid, but now we've handpicked and selected a few of the peak stupid, if you will.
Stupider.
So if you guys are enjoying, stupider, the Dumb and Dumber stupider. So if you guys are enjoying, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on, because we need that growth, spread this freedom, and thank you for that support. All right, Tim, listen, Vanderstock yesterday. So that's the ghost guns or frames and receivers. And remember, the entire point is readily convertible. Remember that, right? So if something can be readily convertible into a firearm, therefore it is a firearm.
Okay. I mean, like a block of aluminum is readily convertible
exactly.
if you have a CNC machine.
I mean, it's readily. So now what I want to say here, and I've got the notes from the actual argument, one of the things that I think is really important for you to be aware of while they're going through this is there was a very large discrepancy in what the SCOTUS justices were asking the state, right, the ATF. Mm-hmm. One of the things they kept on going towards, all of them, left and right, some inadvertently, some directly. What makes it readily convertible? What is the cutoff time? How long does it take? Is it expertise? Is it time? Is it machining? Is it experience? Is it tools? So a lot of these things are all based around intangibles or subjective ideas of readily convertible. That's, I think, where this is going to be. But I got a few of these things picked out for you, and then I'll share with you one of my favorite things that Alito said. But with that, let's get the first one so you get your take on it.
It would be odd to say that in this particular place where Congress has taken a special care to use that sort of language, when Congress wanted that language to be applied, to say, well, we're just going to infer that it also applies here, where Congress did not put that language. And I think it could, again, as I've said, it could wreak havoc with the firearm laws, because there are a lot of things that can be readily converted. A traditional rifle can be converted to a short-barreled rifle in minutes with a hacksaw or by swapping in a shorter barrel. So if this concept, readily converted, Congress only put it into specific places. And we can see in the machine gun provision, Congress said readily restored instead of readily converted. So we need to be very precise here.
All right. So this was one of the strongest arguments, because that was the actual lawyer for Vanderstock. That was against the ATF, right?
Oh, you can tell. Yeah.
Yep. So one of the
he's being reasonable.
Because he's being reasonable, right.
And
So one of the most important things that he did there was he went after the readily convertible speech and language, right? Because their whole argument throughout an hour-and-a-half hearing was it's readily convertible and you drill one hole and therefore it's a fully functioning gun. That's their idea. So therefore, because you can drill that hole, it's actually a firearm before you drill that hole. So effectively, it's a baby before it was a fetus until you actually go to a certain time frame, and then all of a sudden it's a baby again. Like that's the kind of, right?
Well, so is this about ghost guns without serial numbers, or is this about polymer 80s?
About frames, it's frames and receivers that you're making your own firearms. This is the whole thing where they were trying to say that you have to have everything has to be serialized, including 80% arms, because they're firearms. That's
80%. So that's what this, because it doesn't make sense to me that they're talking about, it can be one hole drilled and now it's a firearm.
Right.
Well, that's the the polymer lower 80% thing. And just so people know, there is no 80% rule. There's nothing from the ATF or from the government or from Congress that says 80% and anything over 80% it's considered to be a firearm. That's just made up. It's all a subjective test by the ATF. They just go, we think that could be that's just too easy to make it into a gun. Therefore, we're just going to ban that. So anyway, continue.
So an interesting piece, and it's a little in the weeds of the actual hearing. That's why I didn't bring this up. But he actually alludes to that exact same thing.
Okay.
He actually says that exact same language, but very similar, around 80%. And they went forward and say, well, previously it was 80% was the test. Well, now we're putting forward this different machining standard. It was a whole different thing, but they did address that, and it didn't land as well as that one. Because if you think about the argument, if you just use a simple drill and you do a simple hole, and all of a sudden you have a firearm, on the other end of that, if you take a simple hacksaw and you take a barrel and you cut it off, you now have a short-barreled rifle. That's what That's one of the most powerful things that he said in this whole hearing. It's true.
Yeah.
Totally true. So that's the first one. But now I want to take you to this. This is Elizabeth Prelogar. This is the woman who speaks for the ATF, the one who's always getting her hand caught in the cookie jar because the ATF overreached. Yeah, this is her. So this is number 6, Dr. Slides.
But I also think it's contradicted by the facts on the ground, because what the evidence shows is that these guns were being purchased and used in crime. They were sold to be crime guns. There was a 1,000% increase between 2017 and 2021 in the number of these guns that were recovered as part of criminal investigations. And it makes perfect sense, because the whole reason why you would want to get your hands on one of these unserialized, untraceable firearms is if you are a prohibited person or you want to use that gun in a crime.
Okay. Oh, so you made a mistake there.
Yeah, the only reason why you would have a gun like this is because you want to commit a crime. No, BS. I know people that have made their own firearms. They didn't do it to commit a crime. We've been able to make firearms before we were even a nation.
Yes, correct. She made a very bad assessment and assertion right there. She went down the road of saying the only reason you would ever buy one of these is because if you were a criminal trying to circumvent the background check system. That is 100% false.
Yep. She just absolutely basically indicted millions of Americans that have made their own firearms over the years. And look, folks, even though the government doesn't technically consider black powder to be a firearm, you can literally order a fully functioning firearm through the mail from Cabela's. It'll be delivered to your house, no background check, of a firearm, a replica of a firearm that was considered the deadliest thing in the world in the 1860s. But now you can just have it and go play with it, and you don't even need to do a background check. Or conversely, you can buy kits, and you can have the kits delivered to your house, and you can build a firearm. This has been going on longer than you've been alive, because this has been going on since our founding and before. So they're trying to pretend like making a gun is just a criminal action. The only reason why you would want to make a gun, folks, or have one of these is because you're a criminal. And that is patently false. That flies in the face of reality. And the vast majority of people that manufacture their own firearms do so for their own use. They don't do it to go sell it to a criminal.
Correct. That's exactly correct.
It's a major felony.
Yeah, it's a major felony, and that was a major misstep, in my opinion, of the government's argument. Okay,
and by the way,
that was the problem.
Right. And selling that firearm to a prohibited person is already against the law.
It's already a felony. Right. No, 100%. Everything that they're saying is already a law. They're just trying to defend the rule that they overstepped on. That's the entire point here. In fact, before we go into the next one, let me just show you one of these things that Alito did. I'm just going to tell it to you because I don't have the actual clip. So he was going down the road in his questioning of it's going to become a gun, but it's not a gun. That whole argument that we've always had on this channel. And he holds up his pen pad and a pen and a pen pad. And he said, okay, is this a grocery list before I write groceries on it? And she's like, well, no, because you haven't written groceries on it. He's like, well, right. So is it a gun before it's manufactured to be a gun?
Before it can go bang. Yeah.
She stumbled around that one. And then ACB came in. This was really interesting, and you're going to see a clip here for her in a second. But she said, is it like Hello Fresh? Like, is it a meal when it arrives in the box, or is it a meal when it's, assembled and you're eating it?
Right.
It's a very valid question, because that's where they went wrong on this rule.
Right. Because look, folks, you can order a bunch of parts. You can go to a gun show and pick up every part you need to assemble a rifle or a handgun, right? The parts are all there. And so you can assemble your firearm. So is it a firearm when it's in parts, or is it a firearm when it's actually assembled and able to go bang? Because this whole constructive intent thing, to me, is a gross bastardization of the law.
Yes,
right?
I agree.
It's pre-crime. It's just like they say, well, if it used to be, now they just put them in factory manufactured firearms, but it used to be the ATF would frown upon you putting an M16 hammer into an AR-15. The old AR-15s back in the 80s when I was a kid had a notched hammer in it, and therefore it would hang up on the bolt carrier if you tried to get it to slam fire or something like that. And so putting an M16 hammer into that rifle could be construed as turning it into a machine gun if you remove the sear or something like that. But then they got to the point where you couldn't even be in possession of an M16 hammer if you had an AR-15, because you could always put it into the AR-15 and remove a part and make it into an illegal machine gun, presumably. So now it's pre-crime. Now it goes, well, you have this M16 hammer. It's not because you're a collector or because you just want to put it into your firearm with, the other parts there, and it still functions as a semi-automatic, which they actually sell as a complete firearm now. No. We're just going to assume you're a criminal. Right.
Dude.
If you have a bootlace in your right hand and a Mini 14 in your left hand, is that constructive intent? Because the ATF now says if you tie that boot string around your sling loops and your trigger and you make the thing slam fire, it's a machine gun.
Right.
So,
that's what they argued in the Cargill case. That was actually in there.
So if you have a pair of boots and a Mini 14, Is there constructive intent there, folks? You can't get into this whole pre-crime thing. You can't say a box of parts is going to be a gun unless the box of parts is actually assembled into a gun. And even then, that's not illegal. And it shouldn't be illegal.
So you just did one of your famous instances where you did the segue to the next point without knowing what's coming next. I love when you do that. All right, this is so good. Remember, he just said something about the AR-15, right? One part away from converting into a machine gun. That's what Tim just said, right? Around the whole pre-thought, pre-crime piece. Listen to number 7. This is from ACB.
A question about AR-15s. So Judge Oldham expressed concern that because AR-15 receivers can be readily converted into machine gun receivers, that this regulation on its face turns everyone who lawfully owns an AR-15 into a criminal.
So she just nailed it. Does this legislation or rule convert everyone who owns an AR-15 into a criminal because it could be converted into a machine gun?
And we've talked about this, right, in the past. The AR-15, if the standard is readily convertible, which is nebulous, what's readily?
Oh, 100%.
I mean, do you need a CNC machine? Do you just need a simple hand drill? Do you need a jig? And is possession of a jig and a hand drill that standard for the pre-crime? Look, folks, any semi-automatic can be converted to a machine gun with minimal effort. And so if that becomes the standard, because the machine gun's already banned, right? But now they're trying to say, well, just the mere presence of being able to have a firearm that you could make into a machine gun, well, we got to make that a crime. And we got to make that illegal because you can't have the AR-15 because you could drill that third hole and pick up that part from a gun show and you have a machine gun now.
Correct.
And you can't live by that standard.
No, you cannot because it's so nebulous. And that's the whole point. Now, we're not going to hear the ruling until June of 2025. But the reason that this is so massively important is the things that you just heard around, well, hold on a second. Can an AR-15 be converted to a machine gun by drilling one hole? Or can you create an SBR by hacking off the barrel with a simple hacksaw? Well, wait a minute.
Or folding some sheet metal into a lightning link? Yeah, like you can fold some sheet metal into a lightning link. It doesn't even have to drill a hole.
Serious problems. No, there's some very serious problems. And so when you look at this, that's where I think they're going to get into trouble because it's so nebulous. And the pitch that they were going after was, well, you could make it into a firearm. Okay, well, then you could, by that standard, make AR-15s into full autos. So it's a very nebulous problem. But don't worry, Tim. I'm going to end this on a sweet note. How about a sweet note of stupid? Because one of the justices, Ketanji Jackson Brown, was openly stumped by the 2A lawyer. You're going to like this part. This is going to be great. Right. So this is number 8, Dr. Slide.
So you see the question as what is the best alternative? And the court is just supposed to say, we have 3 options here. Which one do we think the best? The agency didn't pick the best. It's ruled stricken.
Well, I think we actually don't have that. I think our burden is to show that the agency is wrong. Maybe we don't have the right interpretation. But if their interpretation is incorrect, then they're asking the wrong question.
But by incorrect, you mean that they don't have the authority under the statute to reach that? It's inconsistent with the statute?
Correct. If frame or receiver does not include items that may readily be converted to frames or receivers, then this rule is beyond their authority, regardless of what frame or receiver does mean. So they've gone beyond their authority. And so, we've presented the courts with 2 alternatives that we think are better interpretations. But the key point here is that the agency's interpretation is incorrect.
Oh, it's still it. That was the silence. That wasn't just a clip feeding off. That was the silence.
This is the awkward silence. Yeah.
Yes. So what was so good about that is Jackson, or is it Jackson Brown or Brown Jackson?
I don't know.
Whatever. Ketanji, she was trying to basically twist the conversation into, so you're basically saying that the court wants to take over and be the boss and we get to decide whatever, which would overstep the power of the executive agencies in Congress, when the whole point is the executive bureaucracy overstep Congress itself. So she's trying to make it like, well, if you're saying executives overstepping Congress is bad, then why is it okay for the judicial to overstep executive? Because it's called a check and balance, you dunce. But anyway, she goes down this road of like, well, so is it? Are you saying that they overstepped? He's like, yeah, that's kind of why we're here for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
A little.
They've been overstepping nonstop.
Yeah, just a smidgen.
Yeah, and you've even determined that. Shall we bring up the whole, Chevron deference decision you guys handed down? Yeah, we know that they've been overstepping and that they've been playing
100%.
games and that they're, incorrectly. I mean, we've actually have instances where the ATF was trying to ban armor-piercing rifle ammo. And they did. They stopped it for importation. And they did it under the premise of, well, we have a law that says you can't have armor-piercing handgun ammo. And because somebody made an AK into a pistol and it chambers rifle ammo that's going to penetrate armor with or without a penetrator, well, we got to ban that now. We got to ban that ammunition because now somebody's made a handgun that can chamber it. And that is wrong thinking. They even, the two Congress critters that wrote the law, wrote a letter to ATF saying this was never our intent in the law. Rifle ammo will always defeat soft armor, and that is not part of what we were trying to do here. You're overreaching, and ATF did what? Ignored the letter and did it anyway.
Give them one of these.
Right.
It's interesting.
They don't care what the law says. Right?
No, they don't care about that piece.
They have an agenda.
It's interesting you bring that up. It's almost like they have an agenda that they want to fulfill. I remember some other two senators, I believe their names were John Cornyn and Tom Tillis, both Republican traitors, who also said something very similar, sending all these letters and trying to, do Congressional Review Act, CRAs around the overstepping of the ATF that's using the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, of which they passed. And the ATF goes, yeah, that's cute. Anyway, you already passed it. We're going to keep on going. Because some of our leaders in the Republican Party are absolute morons.
Yeah, they are.
God.
Well, before
I can't believe they would abuse this. It was so awesome and nebulous. Oh, my.
Well, before we wind this episode up, I just want to ask, did you see the press conference?
Which one?
Dr. Button Pusher, can you enlighten him?
Israelis and Palestinians can live securely side by side in a lasting peace with equal measures of safety, opportunity, and
the suit, dude. The suit. I don't know who did that.
What was that all? Well,
I don't even know what he's talking about, but
it doesn't matter. What was that old song? Then he shrunk my head. Is that what that is? Wasn't that song?
It looks like it's straight out of Beetlejuice. I mean,
God, it does.
The guys in the office with the tiny heads. Oh, that's awesome. All right, folks. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you guys soon.